Welcome to PR Powerhouse, helping female entrepreneurs to get in the press and to gain PR. I'm Jo Swan, and I'll be sharing how to harness the power of the media to boost your credibility and business visibility, no matter what stage in business you're at. Because I'm on a mission to show you that PR is not just for the big boys. In this show, you'll learn how to reach out to journalists and own your place in the press, because you are ready to become a PR powerhouse. Hello and welcome to episode 8, The Power of Your Story. Now, I'm sure you've heard so many people talk about the power of your story, so many, because coaches talk about it all the time. Whether they're a marketing coach, whether they're a business coach, it comes into play in so many different parts of your business because the power of your story is what connects you to your audience. So you may well have heard about it in the context of maybe across social media, the power of sharing your story. But what we're talking about today is the power of sharing your story through the press and how that story can actually open some doors to enable you to get national coverage to share that story even wider. So it's really exciting because everyone has a story, no matter what you think, no matter whether you think you're PR ready, whether you think you're ready to be in the media, whether you're ready to be in the press, or whether you think your story is actually no big deal and you think that it's something that no one's going to be interested in, that it's not a big enough story maybe, that it's not anything dramatic enough. That's often something that people worry about. But whether or not you have got a real overcoming adversity story, or whether your story is just simply a account of your journey and it's you sharing the steps that you have taken to get to where you are right now, that still makes it a story. So first of all, let's talk about what a story actually is. Okay, so let's start with the big stories. Let's presume that you have a story that is really quite powerful because actually so many entrepreneurs, so many women in business start their business because they are driven by their story. These are the types of women that we work with. People who have quit corporate because they knew that they had to use their skills and they had to use their life to do something bigger, to make a bigger impact in the world, and to use their experience and what they've learned as part of their journey to help other people either not make the same mistakes that they did or to just guide them in a better direction. So, if you have a big story, and by a big story, I mean a real transformation story. So a real rags to riches type story, or a real story of you being absolutely broken, like something really, really traumatic has happened to you. And through the power of your growth, through what you've learned, through personal development quite often, you've found a way through this. You have found a way to beat those terrible things that have happened to you, and you've come out the other side. And you've not just come out the other side, but you've come out the other side absolutely raring to take on life. You've come out the other side with passion and with purpose, and you've come out the other side with pride in terms of you now know the kind of person that you are, and you have now taken control back of your life after whatever it is has happened to you. Now, that kind of story is a huge PR story because it is so inspiring. When we hear of people who have been an absolute rock bottom, to find them rising up and to find them now doing incredible things, it blows my mind every time. Every day we have a client that blows my mind because just to think what is doable, what is actually achievable is amazing when you put your mind to it, when you find tools to help you get through difficult situations and you really focus on being a beacon for other people to actually show them what's possible. It's so inspiring and so motivating. And there's lots of opportunities out there in the media to showcase those kinds of stories. So actually having a really significant story that drives your business is hugely powerful because it opens doors for you to share that journey so that you can therefore inspire others. So the first reason why your story is so powerful is because it actually does make you PRable. Now, I'm talking about this in the context of that big story, but actually whatever story you have opens a door to PR. So let's just refresh our memories about what the media need and what journalists are looking for and some of the rules of the game of PR. So we said right back at the beginning, if you remember, that one of the really key things to great PR is storytelling and not selling. And this is because the media need stories. The media need ways to connect to people on a very individual basis, on a very human basis, because it's not the media's job to promote you and your business. It's not their job to be your marketing arm. It's their job to share stories and information that inspire and that motivate others. So this is where your story comes in, because this is your way in. This is your door opener. So yes, we want them to talk about your business, and your business is basically at the end of that story, isn't it? So the business is what has happened and what has become as a result of you overcoming those challenges and finding a way through them, and now finding ways to support other people. So your business is absolutely connected to your story, and it is usually kind of like the end part of the story that you're telling. So it absolutely is something that is going to get mentioned, but the story is the door opener without a doubt. So there's lots of places that do share real life stories. There's lots of opportunities if you have got that really big sort of transformation story and you're prepared to share it. Now, that's the other thing. You have to really consider whether you are prepared to share it, because the power of your story really only comes when you are prepared to tell kind of the whole story in a way. So you don't obviously have to tell your entire life story, but the bit of the story that is important to illustrating what you're about, your values, your transformation, you are going to have to really dig deep and reveal the vulnerabilities that are connected to that story. So that's if you've got this big story. If you don't have a big story, do not think for a second that that doesn't make you PRable, because you've absolutely got a story. You just have to think about it in a different context. So if you don't have the kind of adversity type story, you just then have to think, well, what are the points of my journey that could build a story? And that might be just simple things like, well, I left corporate world because it wasn't flexible enough to work around my kids. That's then a part of your story, because it's a part of why you do what you do and why you change direction. It's a part of you being a mum and wanting to take more control of your life. It might be that you were made redundant and actually you thought, you know what, I'm not really down with this, being controlled by other people, having my life controlled by other people. I'm going to take control and I'm going to set my own business. And that's a part of your story. So whilst those are not quite as dramatic necessarily as some of the other elements of the other types of stories, they are still a story, and they still give you an angle and they still give you a hook to create PR opportunities. So please don't belittle your story, no matter what kind of story you have, and be very aware that your story does make you PRable. And just remember that line that we say, that the important thing when you're doing PR is storytelling and not selling. So whatever size of your story, you have to lean into it to be able to get those PR opportunities. Number one, the power of your story makes you PRable. Number two, the power of your story connects with your ideal clients. Now, this for me is a no-brainer, because especially at the moment where the growth of online business is just massive. It's literally crazy, the amount of new businesses popping up all over the time. And it's a very competitive space, and there's a lot of people vying for our attention. So when we're marketing ourselves, we don't just want to be marketing ourselves to any old body. We want to be marketing ourselves to our ideal clients, because that's where we're going to get the most traction and that's where we're going to get the most connection. So we don't want to waste time trying to be everything to everyone. We want to save time by really niching in and really getting to the ears and the eyes of the people that we want to work with and that we know we can help. Now, sharing your story with your ideal client enables them to understand that they are your ideal client. So it stops you competing with other people, because they understand that you're individual and they understand what you're bringing to the party. And it stops you competing on price. It stops you competing in a like for like kind of marketing battle, because actually what it's doing is it's helping you stand out on a very human level. And it's helping you engage with people. So let's say, for example, one of our clients was an expert in coaching people who were going through menopause, and she was coaching people who were losing their confidence because of menopause, who had maybe felt pushed out of the corporate world because they'd not been treated very well. They felt like they were at that stage in their life where they wanted to take their control back and they wanted to make the best of that next stage in their life. So that was her audience. Now, if that particular client wanted to have that niche, how was she going to get to that audience if they didn't know that she understood how they felt? How was she going to get buy-in from that audience if they didn't appreciate that she'd been in their shoes? How was she going to get buy-in from that audience as just another coach trying to coach anyone and everyone? What she did was she made it very clear that that was her niche, and she shared her story, which was basically a lot of other people's stories of their experience of being pushed out of corporate because they didn't understand how those women were feeling at that particular time. Now, this enabled her to build up a loyal bank of followers who absolutely wanted a piece of her because they knew that she had been where they are right now. And they could see that transformation of how she had taken herself from that place of vulnerability and fear and feeling crappy about herself to a place where she was now empowered and she had created this new life for herself. Now, if she hadn't shared her story, she would have just been selling coaching, and anyone can sell coaching. So you've got to think about how your story needs to connect to the ideal client. And that's what brings the engagement. And also that's what brings the status of being an expert in a certain thing. Because when you connect your story to your business, you are an expert in so many more dimensions. So you can be an expert because you've trained in certain things. But if you've become an expert through life experience and then you've trained in that thing too, that's when you really rock it. And that's when you really connect with your ideal client. So if you've used your story to be PRable, and then you have achieved press coverage, and then you start to share that press coverage about you being an expert in a certain space, and you're sharing your story about what makes you an expert in that space, when you share that out into the world, that is going to magnetize your ideal clients. That is going to pique their interest. And that's when you're going to get that real connection. So using the power of your story to get media, and then using the media to connect with your ideal client and to really showcase to them that you are the exact perfect person that they need to be speaking to is super, super powerful. Okay, the next point, number 3 about the power of your story is significance. There is not really much more of an impactful reason to share your story than this. It can literally transform lives. Sharing your story can transform lives. And we have seen this impact from our clients who have chosen to do this. So from our clients who have chosen to either share their story in the media or perhaps share their story through writing a book, we have seen global impact from them doing just that. And we have seen the messages that they get back from people all over the world who they have never met saying, "Oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I needed to hear that right now. Like that has really connected with me and it's made me feel like I'm not alone, or it's made me feel like I'm not stupid, or I'm not a failure, or I'm not broken and I can fix this and I can come back from this." You get all of these responses from people who have emotionally connected with your content, and it can literally transform their lives because it can be that pivot point that they decide to take action. It can be that point that you had in your life where you say, "Well, no more. This is not going to be the way it is." And the power of that is incredible. So when you think about why you've set up this business, you've set it up because you've got a passion and a purpose and you've got a mission and you're trying to achieve something. You're trying to create some impact. You're trying to create some change. Now, that can only happen if you manage to reach people with your message and if you manage to connect with people with that message. But by sharing your story, that's exactly what you are doing. And there is absolutely no doubt that somebody out there will need to hear that message at that point. So sharing your story can literally transform lives. One thing I just want to mention about that. So this idea of your story being able to transform lives, there's quite a responsibility that comes with that, isn't there? And I'm not wanting you to take that lightly. It is a responsibility, but also I want you to think about everything that you have been through to get to this point and exactly what that is worth. So you have done so much work on yourself to get to this point, to be ready to share your story. You have done so, you probably spent a lot of money on yourself to get to this point, to be ready, to be at a point where you can share your story and where you have got something positive and uplifting to say. And for me, that does feel like a responsibility, but it feels like a very positive one, because it feels like, well, do you know what? I have kind of earned my place here now. I have worked through all of this crap to get to this point, and now I've earned my place. I feel like it is a responsibility to share my story, to enable other people to have that hope and that motivation and that feeling that they can change where they are right now and that there is more to come. So I think we have to recognize that, yes, it is a responsibility, but I think when you've been through so much, then it is a responsibility to kind of use those learnings and use that knowledge and also to pass it on. You know, this idea of paying it forward, whoever helped you out at your worst or lowest points, you know, you can be that person for someone else now. So I think the responsibility of sharing your story is something that we don't want to take lightly, but something that we also want to kind of embrace with pride in terms of really embracing how far you have come and then using that in a positive way. So following on from that, point number 4 is all around how the power of your story can drive you. And this is the case for so many of our clients. We see them so determined to really hit new heights. We see them really determined to achieve their goals because they are driven by their story. And once you really connect to it, and once you really actually embrace it, then you can use it to drive you forward. So there's a couple of ways that our clients explain this to us in terms of how they feel about it. And one of the points that they say is that they feel like they have to make it count. So, like I was saying just now, when you've been through a process and it could have been a difficult process and you've come out the other side, you feel like you've got to make it count. So actually, all of that stuff that has happened is really driving you forward to then achieve where you really want to be and then achieve those goals that you've really, really got. One of the other things that our clients say about their story and the power of it is that actually using it in a press perspective, so using it in PR, sharing it widely, talking about it openly, and being very sort of vulnerable about their experiences actually helps them detach from a lot of those experiences. So I'm talking now, you know, if it was something that was maybe a traumatic experience in your past or something that you've been through that you wouldn't wish other people to go through, actually kind of decompartmentalizing that in a way and looking at it from an outside perspective. So almost looking at it like as a third party, as if it wasn't you, and looking at, well, this is where you were. This is what you've done in the meantime. This is where you are now. Look at all of those things that have happened in that time and look at where you are going. Now, quite often that brings a lot of pride and it brings a lot of excitement about what opportunities are out there and what the future can hold, because my God, if you can do that, you can do anything. And a lot of our clients say that actually one of the really big parts of the power of their story is that using it in a positive way helps them detach from the negative elements of that story, because they're starting to use it for good and they're starting to use it in a way that's making really positive impact. So quite often it's a bit of a cathartic process, and people who've written books will tell you this, that the process of them actually writing that book is almost a part of their therapy. And quite often the PR process is the same, because you have to really identify with what parts of that story you're willing to share. You have to really identify with, well, what's the relevance of me telling this part of my story? And so you then sort of identify with the meaning of it and the purpose of it and the job that it can do. And once you start to do that and you start to detach yourself in a way from the story, it can help drive you forward with absolute mission, with a mega, mega focused mission. And it's like a bit of a fuel up your backside because you know, it is a driving force, and that's something that impresses me every single day about our clients, you know, just moving forward from some of these things that have happened to them in their journey and using that as a positive driving force is just amazing to watch. So the fifth and final point I want to talk to you about in terms of the power of your story is a very much a positive one. And this is the fact that actually sharing your story can get you paid. And this is worth knowing. So when you're in a really great place with your story, when you've got it to a point where you can tell it wholeheartedly, passionately, in a way that does not make you crumble and in a way that is a very motivating and inspiring way, then you can start to share that story on bigger platforms. So yes, you can start to share it through PR, but you can also start to share it through speaking gigs. And this is where the money starts to come, because actually people who are prepared to open up and to share their story and their journey are people who inspire others. And that's what event organizers are looking for. So when they're looking for speakers, they're not necessarily looking for the speakers who are going to do the how to teach kind of sessions, how to do this, how to do this. They're not necessarily looking for the people that are there to talk them through an actual process. They are more often looking for people who will inspire and who will motivate and who will connect to the values of that business or that brand or that event. So if you're putting yourself out there as someone who is able to inspire and motivate through their story, and also you've got some expertise and some knowledge based on your business that you can throw into the mix, that makes you a really powerful speaker. And that makes you a very credible person to put yourself forward for speaking gigs, which you can get paid for. So your story could actually pay you in more ways than one. And I think that's a nice little thing to wrap up on, because that kind of idea of coming full circle, that once you are really prepared to get that message out there, then, you know, the power of your story has got so many layers to it and so many levels to it. So obviously the first thing that you've really got to do to be able to make the most of any of those is to really connect yourself with that story, really identify what that story is, and really get to grips with what parts of your story make sense for you to share in connection to your business. So it's not about sharing your whole life story. It's about working out what you want to stand for. It's about working out what your message and your mission is and what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do, and connecting the parts of your life that basically have led you to this point, the parts of your journey that make sense to this end mission. It's about sharing those. And it's about sharing those with honesty and with vulnerability and with passion. And if you do that, if you do it from an authentic point of view, from the heart, you are going to make a massive impact, not just on your own business, you will see that effect, but also on the lives of so many people. So the power of your story is something that I feel so passionate about, and something that I hope you can use to not only elevate your position in business, but also to really make that impact that you're here to make. If you'd like some help on some direction and some tips on how to pull out the elements of your story that are going to be the most PRable, that are going to be the things that the journalist would like to know, you can download our What's Your Story guide. The link is in the show notes, and that will just give you a starting point so that you can start to pull this together and you can start to see, actually, what parts of this do I really need? What do I need to tell? What bits do I need to share? So that could be a really useful guide for you. So please do go and make the most of that. Thank you for listening to PR Powerhouse with me, Jo Swan. If you want to feel empowered and supported and excited about getting in the press, come and join us in our free community over on Facebook at PR You Can Do It. I would absolutely love to see you there so I can help you take those next steps to getting in the media.